Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's me, Kigev from Higher Glamazon. Today I want to do a video about two of my favorite luxury brands, which is Cartier and Chanel. I don't know, I feel like there's so much coronavirus fatigue, but I have a different take on it. It's so sad hearing like what's been going on obviously with this virus, and I hope all of you are okay. But one thing which I found very interesting that I was thinking about the other day is how are luxury brands reacting basically to the virus. Chanel and Cartier, two of my favorite luxury brands, and Chanel is notoriously known for being very secretive about the company, or the maison as they call it in French. It's an extremely secretive company. They rarely I think it's only recently they've been sharing their revenues per year. It's a very, very secretive company, and I think that also kind of adds to the cachet. Cartier, I wouldn't say is secretive per se because it's part of the Richemont group, but I do feel like they also are fairly opaque about like what's going on with them. So because they're two of my favorite luxury brands. I have loads of faves. I love Chanel, obviously, Cartier, Fendi. I love Versace as well, but I would say Cartier and Chanel are two of basically my faves. So I've been thinking a lot about how are they basically being impacted by the pandemic that's kind of taking over the world, and I have a few theories and thoughts. I'd be very interested to hear if you guys agree or disagree with me. First of all, let's start with Cartier. So basically, I've done a video on Cartier before. I think Cartier, interestingly enough, I think they're going to be fine. Obviously, the type of clients for Cartier products are like the 1% or people who just love jewelry. I do think that they have like, obviously they know who their clients are, but as an outsider looking in, I think they do have like kind of two market segments. They have that like super rich 1%, and then I do think that they also have people who just love jewelry. And I feel like if you're someone who loves jewelry or fine jewelry, like you're not going to be like whinging or moaning about how much something costs. You just know what it is because it's jewelry. So my view is that Cartier probably will just ride this out. Obviously, China has really affected luxury brands, but if we put China to the side for a second, just because Chinese consumers are such huge powers of luxury revenues, if we put that to the second, Cartier at least has created an e-commerce strategy that makes some sense. Like if you go on Cartier.com, they do have a decent e-commerce strategy for the US and for Europe, and they even have like a Cartier ambassador like web chat thing on their e-commerce site. If you just go on it now, for example, like I'm on it right now, and I have to say I'm really impressed. Like if you wanted to order online, you can. They really encourage you to call them as well, and they also have like a free callback section of their site. So I think that's going to help them a lot weather through the pandemic, because people obviously, even though some states in the US are reopening and various parts of Europe are reopening in terms of the luxury market, obviously people are feeling frightened about going into stores, and Cartier's boutiques are a massive part of like how they make money, particularly for like the segments of people who are going to look for engagement rings or whatever. You can't just stroll into a boutique at the moment, depending on where you live. And Cartier do have a footprint in South Africa. Even though I live in Tanzania, I'm very curious to know what is the approach in South Africa. South Africa is currently locked down at the moment. How does that affect the Cartier boutique in Santon City, etc.? So I think the e-commerce site for Cartier is going to help them a lot, because people can just order their love bracelets online. I mean, it's quite shocking the fact that you could just order like a $6,000 love bracelet online like it's nothing. But I also just love the sort of attention to detail and the fact that they are trying to shore up their online sales. So I think that this is going to help them a lot. You probably need to know obviously your wrist size and things like that before you make an order, but I think Cartier in good shape basically because they have a very decent e-commerce site. And also like the people who are Cartier aficionados, they're not going to be overly affected by the pandemic in terms of financially. I mean, there'll be a few financial casualties for this market group, but it's not going to be massive because these are people with trusts, investments, savings, etc. So whoever's going to be purchasing Cartier this year, of course, the pandemic might make them think, oh, maybe I'll get something cheaper or I'll get something different. But at the end of the day, if they were going to buy a love bracelet in 2020, they're still going to buy a love bracelet in 2020. So I think Cartier is going to be relatively shielded from this. And if you add in their website, they'll be absolutely fine. So yeah, I would say that's that for Cartier. And then for Chanel, I think Chanel is in a more interesting kind of situation. Chanel's website is so random. If you go on there now, they're like still promoting the cruise collection if you choose the United Kingdom as the country website that you want to look at, which is interesting to me. I think that also kind of says that they are kind of waiting things out a bit. Obviously, because Chanel does pret-a-porter, which is ready to wear, they have to look at the seasons. Obviously, the weeks and months are going, but people are still locked inside in Europe. So how does that affect them and the things that they basically want to do in terms of selling their products? That obviously means that pret-a-porter won't be as massive a deal for them as it normally is, just because people can't go to the boutique at the moment in Europe and various other parts. China is slowly being like reopened, but I think again it also depends on how things go for them at this point. But also Chanel is notorious for the fact that they're not interested in e-commerce, they're not interested in online orders for fashion, for handbags, for pret-a-porter. They have some, I think on the US site, you can order perfume and stuff, which is, I suppose, fair enough. But I think just not having an e-commerce site now, I hope that this makes like the top dogs and the powers that be at Chanel realize, like, yeah, it's Chanel, we get it. They can probably go many months without flogging anything in their stores just because they have massive cash reserves and it's a hugely, hugely profitable brand. But I just feel like, why not just have like an e-commerce site so that people can order? Not everyone's going to want to go to like Sloane Street in London or, you know, the boutiques in Paris, like at the moment. Like they might be feeling, even when things settle down with the coronavirus, people might not be feeling that comfortable. So I feel like even though Chanel is not going to be like affected, like, whoa, no one's buying anything, that's not going to happen. People are always going to buy Chanel handbags at this point, and women who love Chanel are always going to support the brand. But I do think that there's this kind of like hesitance a little bit, because it's like, ooh, great, like now Chanel don't have e-commerce for handbags, and you know they're not really that like understanding obviously when it comes to e-commerce things. It's been years and years and years and they don't care. So it's just an interesting thing of like, how will the pandemic affect Chanel? I don't think it's going to have a massive impact on their bottom line, but I do think it kind of makes you think twice about which luxury brands really want to get their products into the hands of clients and consumers. I feel like Cartier at least are showing a level of seriousness and understanding that, yeah, people, look, at the end of the day, the people who Cartier and Chanel are targeting, they're not the everyday people. These are like various people, the celebrities, the super rich, people who work in finance, people who work in tech, entrepreneurs, things like that. These people have cash swimming around constantly. So it's not an issue of lowering their prices. They're never going to lower their prices because they don't want to look desperate. But I think it's also an issue of just trying to distribute your products like in a way that's more effective for the pandemic. And I think that's key. So, I mean, I don't know. What do you think? How do you think Chanel and Cartier are going to be affected? Do you think that it's a big deal, or do you think they're both going to ride out the storm? I think they're both going to ride it out. It's going to be fine. But I am side-eyeing Chanel at the moment. Like, guys, come on. Why not have e-commerce for handbags? Imagine how helpful that would be right now. They can still maintain the luxury experience with the packaging and everything,